The morning sun rose over Halcyon 6, a thriving human colony far from Earth. The colony was peaceful, its fields green with crops, and families celebrated the Unity Festival. Children ran through the fields, laughing and playing, their smiles as bright as the skies above. It was a day of joy, of hope, until everything changed. A blip on the radar, then another, and another. It started small, barely noticeable, but the pattern was unmistakable. Human ships in the sky, huge, dark, and cold. Imperial ships. The Galactic Empire had arrived. The colony's defense systems went to alert. Commander Kara Helix, leader of the colony's defense, stared at the monitors, her heart racing. She ordered the local forces to prepare for a possible attack, but there was no time. Within moments, the Empire's fleet opened fire. Laser beams rained down from the ships, ripping through the peaceful city below. It was a massacre. The Imperial fleet had no mercy. They didn't want land or resources. They didn't even want the people. The Empire's orders were clear: eradicate the future of humanity. The schools, where children were supposed to be safe, were the first targets. 800,000 human children died in minutes, their lives snuffed out in an instant by the Empire's weapons. The screams of terrified children echoed across the galaxy as their schools burned. The streets that were once full of life, full of laughter, now lay in ruins. Back on Earth, the news spread like wildfire. Every corner of humanity, from the peaceful cities to the war-torn fronts, felt the shockwaves of the attack. General Aaron Kane, a hero to many, sat in his war room when he heard the news. He didn't need to see the pictures. He already knew. His daughter, too, was among the lost. He clenched his fists until his knuckles turned white. At that moment, something inside him snapped. No more diplomacy. No more talks. The Empire had crossed the line, and now humanity would respond. On Earth's largest military base, Fortress Sol, the world's leaders gathered. They were stunned, speechless, their hearts heavy with grief. But in the middle of the sorrow, there was a fire that burned with an intensity only humans knew. President Rachel Tain stood at the front of the room, her face a mask of fury. They think we are weak. They think we are nothing. But we are human, and we will not bend to tyranny. This is just the beginning. She slammed her fist on the table. We will make them pay. The room was silent for a moment, before one by one, humanity's leaders stood, nodding in agreement. This was not a time for mourning, it was a time for action. A signal was sent across the galaxy, one that would echo through space and time. It was a simple message, short, sharp, and filled with a promise of vengeance. To the Galactic Empire, you have killed our children. You have awakened the wrath of humanity. Flee now, or face the consequences. The message traveled across the stars, reaching every corner of the galaxy. Some laughed, some mocked it, but many felt the weight of humanity's words. The Empire, in all its power, had made a terrible mistake. Admiral Lissara, the cold-hearted commander of the Empire's forces, received the message with an amused smile. Weak little humans, she muttered, brushing her silver hair back. She did not fear them. They were nothing more than ants beneath her boot. And soon, she would stamp them out. But she didn't understand. Humanity was no ordinary species, and this was no ordinary warning. Back on Halcyon 6, the survivors, mostly the brave soldiers and their families, huddled together. They knew what was coming. They knew that the Empire would never stop. But humanity had faced worse, and they would fight back. Commander Kara Helix watched the stars, her mind racing. The destruction of Halcyon 6 was just the beginning. Earth would be ready. The Empire would not get away with this. The war was coming, and humanity was ready to show the galaxy what it meant to cross them. The warning had been sent, and the galaxy would soon know the full meaning of human resilience. The destruction of Halcyon 6 had shaken humanity to its core, but it also ignited something stronger than grief: rage. As the news spread across Earth, the leaders of the coalition gathered to form a plan. The Empire had taken away their children, their future, but humanity would not be broken. They would make the Empire pay for every single life lost. In a dark war room deep beneath the surface of Fortress Sol, the most brilliant minds of humanity came together. Among them was General Aaron Kane, the grieving father whose daughter had perished in the massacre. His heart burned with fury, but his mind was calm and clear. This wasn't a time for wild revenge. It was time for strategy. "We must hit them where it hurts," General Kane said, his voice steady. "We need to cripple their strength before they can strike again. We have one chance." On the far wall of the war room, a holographic map of the galaxy flickered. The Galactic Empire, in all its terrifying power, had stretched across dozens of star systems. But there were weaknesses. Every empire, no matter how powerful, had a crack that could be exploited. Humanity's task was to find it and exploit it. The team worked for days without sleep, analyzing every piece of data. Avaren, a young genius from the Earth Defense League, uncovered something crucial. The Empire's forces were controlled by a central AI system, one that linked their fleets and military decisions. If the AI could be hacked or disabled, the Empire would be thrown into chaos. "This is it," Ava said, eyes wide. "If we can infiltrate the AI core on Zereth Prime, we can shut down their fleet. We can blind them long enough for us to strike." The plan was risky. Zereth Prime was the heart of the Empire's military operations, a heavily guarded planet surrounded by defense stations. But humanity had no choice. If they didn't act, the Empire would strike Earth next. The mission was given the codename Project Eclipse. A small, elite team would infiltrate Zereth Prime, disable the AI system, and escape. At the same time, a massive military force would hold the line against the Empire's advancing fleet, buying time for the operation. As the team prepared for their dangerous mission, General Kane gathered them for a final briefing. He looked into the eyes of each soldier, seeing the same determination he felt in his heart. "We fight for the fallen," he said. "We fight for the future. No one left behind. We bring every one of them back." The team, a mix of elite soldiers and scientists, was ready. They boarded their ships, knowing they may never return. But they didn't hesitate. They had a mission, and they would see it through, no matter the cost. Meanwhile, on the edge of the galaxy, Admiral Lizara watched the human response unfold with amusement. She had received their message and laughed at their threats. "Flee now," she scoffed. "We'll crush them where they stand." Lizara's arrogance was her greatest weakness. She believed the humans were nothing more than ants beneath the Empire's boot. She underestimated their will to survive, their ability to adapt, and their hunger for revenge. Back on Earth, the military forces prepared for the worst. Human fleets, though smaller in number compared to the Empire's vast armada, were ready. Captain Lily Chen, a veteran of many battles, stood at the front of her command ship, staring out at the fleet. Her eyes were hard, filled with the same fire that had ignited the whole human race. "Ready the fleet," Captain Chen ordered, her voice unwavering. "We won't let them take our home." As Earth's defenses rallied, Avaren and her team launched their mission. They slipped past Imperial patrols, avoiding detection with expert precision. The journey to Zereth Prime was dangerous, but they had a secret weapon: human ingenuity. Ava's hacking skills had already compromised several of the Empire's lesser networks, and she used this knowledge to slip through the Empire's security like a shadow in the night. But time was running out. The Empire's fleet was getting closer to Earth. Humanity had no more time to waste. The team's arrival on Zereth Prime was tense. They knew the moment they touched down, they would be met with heavy resistance. But they had come prepared, using everything at their disposal to get past the Empire's defenses. With the AI core in sight, Avaren's fingers flew across her console. The countdown had begun. She could hear the sound of footsteps approaching. Sweat beaded on her forehead, but she didn't stop. This was it. She knew that if she failed, Earth's last chance for survival would slip away. Cliffhanger. Just as Ava Wren typed in the final command to disable the AI, the alarms blared. The Empire had detected them. Time was running out. Would they make it out alive? Would their plan succeed? Or was this the end of humanity's fight? The final countdown was ticking. Ava Wren's fingers moved faster than ever, typing code after code into her terminal. The hum of the AI core in front of her echoed in her ears, the machine cold and indifferent to the humans scrambling to destroy it. 5 minutes. It was all they had. The Empire's soldiers were closing in. "We're almost there," Ava whispered, her voice tight with pressure. The countdown clock on her screen blinked relentlessly. The soldiers with her held their weapons steady, eyes scanning every corner of the dark, sterile facility. They were ready for the worst. "We don't have much time," Captain Lily Chen said from behind, her voice low but clear. "Stay sharp, Ava." Ava nodded without looking back, her eyes locked on the screen. Zereth Prime was supposed to be impenetrable, its defenses too strong for any human force to break through. But here they were, inside its heart, fighting to cripple the Empire's entire military. If this worked, it could be the beginning of the end for the Galactic Empire. But failure meant death for them all, and perhaps even the death of Earth itself. Suddenly, the doors at the far end of the room slammed open with a deafening crash. Several Empire soldiers, dressed in dark armor, stormed in. They had finally found them. "Get down," Captain Chen shouted as she ducked behind a console, her team following suit. Gunfire erupted, filling the air with the crack of blasters. The soldiers opened fire, their energy bolts slicing through the air, narrowly missing Ava and her team. Ava's heart pounded in her chest. She could feel the weight of the mission pressing down on her. She had no time for this. Her fingers danced across the console, typing the final code. But the AI was more complicated than she had anticipated. The system fought back, its defenses strong. She cursed under her breath. She had to finish it. Captain Chen and her soldiers moved with deadly precision. They fired at the advancing enemy, taking down 2 soldiers before they even had a chance to react. But the numbers were overwhelming. The Empire's forces were swarming the room, and the air was thick with tension. "Ava," Captain Chen yelled, "we need to go. Now." Ava looked at the countdown on her screen. 3 minutes left. "Almost there," she muttered, sweat dripping down her face. But the Empire wasn't giving up. More soldiers poured into the room. Their leader, Commander Zoreth, a towering figure in gleaming black armor, pushed through the crowd. He grinned as he spotted Ava at the terminal. "You think you can destroy the Empire with a few keystrokes? How cute." His voice was deep, mocking. He raised his weapon, aiming at Ava. "This ends now." Before anyone could react, Captain Chen dove in front of Ava, her rifle raised. She fired a burst of energy, striking Commander Zoreth in the chest. He staggered back, surprised by the speed of the attack. But he quickly regained his balance, undeterred by the blow. He aimed his weapon at Chen, ready to fire. Ava could hear the sound of gunfire and shouts all around her. She was losing focus. She couldn't let her team die. "Ava, now," Captain Chen screamed, her voice desperate. Ava didn't wait. She hit the enter key. The room went dark. For a moment, everything stopped. The air grew still. And then, it happened. The AI core shut down. Suddenly, the alarms stopped blaring. The massive holographic displays flickered, and the Empire's soldiers froze. The central command of the Empire's fleet, its entire military infrastructure, was now offline. Victory. Ava could barely believe it. The mission was a success. But the cost. The room was still filled with gunfire, and Commander Zoreth was recovering. He wasn't finished yet. "Get out," Ava screamed. She grabbed Captain Chen's arm, pulling her toward the exit. The Empire's forces would recover quickly, and they had no time to waste. With their enemies closing in, they sprinted down the hall, their footsteps echoing in the silence of the now disabled command center. The team moved fast, adrenaline coursing through their veins. They were almost there, almost out. But just as they neared the exit, the doors slammed shut. More Empire soldiers. No, Ava gasped. We can't let them catch us, Captain Chen shouted, turning back to face the approaching soldiers. She lifted her weapon, ready to defend the team. But they couldn't fight their way out. They had to escape. Fast. Ava felt the weight of the failure heavy on her shoulders. If they didn't make it out, everything they worked for would be in vain. She looked around for an escape route. There had to be something. Cliffhanger. Suddenly, a hatch opened above them. A rescue ship hovered down, its doors wide open. This way, a voice called. Ava didn't hesitate. The team jumped toward the opening hatch, but just as they reached it, Commander Zoreth lunged forward, firing his weapon. Would they escape? Would they survive? The next moments were crucial. The Empire had been struck a blow, but could they make it out alive? The team didn't waste a second. The blast from Commander Zoreth's weapon narrowly missed Ava Ren, who ducked behind a metal pillar, her heart racing. The ship's hatch loomed just ahead, their only hope for survival. Go, now, Captain Chen shouted. She fired a round from her rifle, hitting an approaching Empire soldier in the chest. But the enemy was relentless. There were too many of them. They couldn't hold them off forever. Ava could hear the thumping of boots behind her. The Empire soldiers were closing in fast. If they didn't move now, they'd be surrounded. Without hesitation, she sprinted forward, her breath sharp in her chest. The team followed, running as fast as they could toward the waiting ship. A second shot rang out, and the ground next to Captain Chen exploded. Dirt and debris flew through the air. The enemy was getting closer, and they had no time left. The hatch was still open, but the enemy was now in full pursuit. Commander Zoreth barked orders, and more soldiers swarmed into the hallway. They were trapped. We're not going to make it, Ava shouted, panic rising in her voice. Yes, we are, Captain Chen said firmly, pushing Ava forward. Keep moving. I'll cover you. Ava didn't argue. She focused on the ship ahead. She could see the crew inside, their faces tense, ready for the escape. Lieutenant Quinn, the pilot of the ship, was already preparing for takeoff. But even with the hatch open, the ship was exposed. The Empire's forces had already begun to set up their weapons. Captain, we need to hurry. Quinn's voice crackled through the comms. Suddenly, a blinding explosion shook the hallway. A shockwave hit the team, knocking them to the ground. Ava's vision blurred, and her ears rang from the blast. She struggled to get back up, her hands shaking. Captain Chen was already on her feet, firing at the enemy soldiers, trying to keep them at bay. She looked over her shoulder, her eyes fierce. Get up, Ava. This is not over. Ava pushed herself to her feet, but she could feel the weight of exhaustion pulling at her. Her limbs felt heavy, and her mind raced with thoughts of the battle they had just fought. They'd accomplished the mission. They had disabled the Empire's military air, but now they were paying the price. The Empire wasn't going to let them leave so easily. With her team pushing forward, Ava forced herself to focus. She sprinted toward the ship, her boots pounding against the cold metal floor. The enemy was hot on their heels, but she couldn't stop now. There was too much at stake. Another blast echoed behind them. This time, the ship's engines roared to life. It was lifting off. The door was closing, but there was still one member of the team left behind. Captain Chen, Ava screamed. We're leaving without you. The captain, still firing at the advancing soldiers, didn't hesitate. She turned and dashed toward the ship, her speed almost impossible for anyone to match. But the enemy wasn't done. Zoreth and his soldiers were gaining ground, and he raised his weapon once more. The air filled with the high-pitched hum of energy blasts. each one striking closer to Captain Chen. She was almost there, just a few feet away from the hatch, when an energy bolt hit her leg. She staggered, falling to the ground. "No!" Ava cried, rushing back. "Go!" Captain Chen shouted, blood staining her uniform. "Get out of here!" But Ava didn't listen. She grabbed the captain by the arm, pulling her toward the hatch. The ship was already beginning to rise, and the door was almost closed. "Help us!" Ava screamed to the crew. Without hesitation, Lieutenant Quinn pushed the throttle forward, bringing the ship closer to the ground. The hatch opened wide enough for them to pull Captain Chen inside. It was just in time. The ship's engines roared louder, pushing the vessel into the air as more blasts from the Empire soldiers missed them by inches. Ava and her team pulled the captain inside just as the hatch slammed shut, locking them all safely inside. But as the ship soared higher into the sky, Ava could see the Empire's forces below, still shooting, still trying to stop them. "We made it," Captain Chen whispered, her voice weak but filled with relief. Her leg was badly wounded, but she was alive. Ava stood beside her, panting heavily. The rest of the team was exhausted too, but they were alive. They had done the impossible. They had taken down the Empire's military AI, and they had escaped Zerath Prime. But they knew the Empire would come for them. The battle wasn't over. It had only just begun. "Prepare for jump," Lieutenant Quinn said, her voice calm despite the chaos around them. "Where are we going?" Ava asked. Quinn didn't hesitate. "We need to get to Earth. It's the only place we can regroup." But even as they made their way out of Zerath Prime's atmosphere, Ava couldn't shake the feeling of dread that hung in the air. They had dealt a heavy blow to the Empire, but they had also made themselves their #1 target. Cliffhanger. As the ship jumped into faster-than-light travel, a holographic message from Earth flashed across the screen. It was a warning. The Empire's fleet was already heading toward Earth, and this time they would be ready. The ship tore through the blackness of space, leaving Zerath Prime far behind them. Ava Wren stared out the window, her mind racing. They had done what seemed impossible. They had crippled the Empire's military network, and they had escaped. But now, the real challenge began. Earth. The Empire was coming. And they were coming fast. The ship's engines hummed steadily as the crew went about their tasks. Ava sat in the cockpit, her hands gripping the chair, trying to steady her thoughts. Captain Chen was resting in the med bay, her leg heavily bandaged. She had pushed herself too far, and Ava could see the toll it was taking on her. "How long until we reach Earth?" Ava asked, her voice steady but her heart racing. "About 12 hours, Lieutenant Quinn answered, her voice calm. She was focused on the controls, her fingers dancing over the ship's interface. "But I'm picking up some strange readings on the scanners. It's like something is following us." Ava's heart skipped a beat. "The Empire." Quinn nodded. "Could be. I'll keep monitoring. But right now, we need to keep our focus. Earth is our only chance." Ava nodded and stood up. She made her way to the back of the ship, where the rest of the team was gathered. There was a quiet tension in the air. Every one of them knew what was at stake. They had only one shot at this. If the Empire caught up with them before they could warn Earth, it would all be over. "How's the captain?" Ava asked, looking at Sergeant Jake Peterson, who was helping Captain Chen sit up in the med bay. "She's holding up," Jake said, his voice low. "But she's in bad shape. We can't afford to slow down." Ava nodded. "We won't. We have to make it to Earth. If we don't, it'll be the end of humanity." The words hung in the air, heavy and full of fear. The team fell into a heavy silence. They had no idea what would await them when they arrived. The Empire's fleet was enormous, and it was heading straight for Earth. There was no way they could fight back on their own. "We need help," Ava said, breaking the silence. "We need to warn Earth and get them ready. They'll need all the defenses they can muster." "I'll send a distress signal," Quinn said, turning to the comms console. But we don't know if they'll get it in time. Earth's defenses might not be enough to stop the Empire's fleet. I'm not going to let that happen, Ava said, her voice firm. We can't just sit here and wait. We have to do something. Quinn glanced at her. What are you suggesting? Ava took a deep breath, her mind already working through the possibilities. We need to strike first. We have the technology now. The Empire's fleet is vulnerable if we can get inside their defenses. You're suggesting we attack? Sergeant Peterson said, his eyes wide. Are you out of your mind? We barely survived Zareth Prime. We can't afford to be afraid anymore, Ava replied, determination hardening her voice. The Empire won't stop. They'll keep coming until they wipe us all out. But we have something they don't. Surprise. We know their weaknesses. We know what they fear. Captain Chen had been listening quietly from her seat in the mid-bay. She's right, she said, her voice soft but clear. We have to strike now. If we wait until they reach Earth, it'll be too late. Ava turned to her, surprised to see her so resolute despite her injuries. You think we can do it? Captain Chen smiled faintly. We've come this far, haven't we? We've already proven that humanity can do the impossible. We just have to keep believing in it. Ava nodded, feeling the weight of their decision settle over her. The team had come together through so much. They had fought the Empire, survived impossible odds, and now they were about to face their greatest challenge yet. All right, Ava said, looking at Quinn and Peterson. We'll attack. But we need to find the Empire's fleet and take it out before they can reach Earth. Quinn's fingers flew over the console. I'm tracking the fleet's position. They're not far behind. We'll have to move fast. Ava took a deep breath. Prepare for battle. It's time we showed the Empire what humanity is capable of. The ship shifted course, heading straight into the path of the Empire's fleet. Ava's heart pounded in her chest. This was their last chance. There was no turning back now. Cliffhanger. As the ship closed in on the Empire's fleet, Ava's stomach tightened. A fleet of this size would be a massive challenge. They were outnumbered, outgunned, but they were humans. And if there was one thing humans knew how to do, it was to fight when everything seemed lost. Get ready, Quinn said, her voice steady. We're going in. The countdown had begun.